Mallory asked me to make my newsletters shorter. Then she asked me to write a newsletter about the new weight loss injections. I have a lot to say about this topic, so I apologize for its length. Let's dive in. In this month's newsletter, I want to share with you some important information gleaned from my years of experience that will help you put the current medical craze, weight loss injections, into perspective. For 37 years, I experienced many new drugs hitting the market, and I helped many women manage their weight through many different weight loss crazes. If you are struggling with your weight and considering the new weight loss injections, Semaglutide and Tirzepatide, and I will be using the actual drug names, not the branded names, I hope this information helps you objectively evaluate them and decide if they are a good fit for you. First and foremost, the epidemic of obesity is a threat to our well-being and longevity. The number of children and adults dealing with extra weight in our society is staggering and just keeps increasing. Since extra weight can affect quality of life and is associated with increased disease, promoting weight loss has become a priority and a huge industry. I don't like putting people into boxes and will freely admit that obesity is not a problem for some women. Despite being overweight, these women are happy with their bodies and their medical markers do not indicate disease. Let's just admit that not everyone is genetically designed to be thin, but that doesn't mean they are unhealthy. But in my practice, I rarely encountered these women. The majority of women in my previous practice, weight gain during perimenopause and menopause is extremely common, did have concerns about optimizing their weight, or their laboratory studies revealed abnormalities that put them at risk for disease. These women wanted to lose weight or medically, I recommended they lose weight. Let's start with the obvious. Losing weight is not always easy. The purpose of this newsletter is not to educate you on the causes of obesity, but let's look at a brief list. The culprits are things I've mentioned many times in my newsletters. We all know that weight is not just calories in and calories out. Truth be told, our modern lifestyle is rarely conducive to good health. Metabolic disruptors such as highly palatable, ultra-processed foods, chemicals from our environment that confuse our metabolic chemistry, hormone imbalances which affect weight, sedentary lifestyle, exposure to non-native electromagnetic frequencies, such as the blue light of our screens increasing blood sugar, hectic and stressful schedules that can elevate cortisol, lack of circadian rhythm, and lack of exposure to nature can all contribute to a confused and poorly functioning metabolism. Sometimes the weight loss solutions for my patients were simple, since almost everyone can work to upgrade their diet and move more. They just needed a little motivation and guidance to obtain their goal. Sometimes balancing their hormones would result in weight loss because, female hormones, thyroid, adrenal, and pancreatic hormones can all affect weight. And other times, working to reduce inflammation, there really is such a thing as inflammatory weight. Or working to avoid toxins allowed their metabolism to normalize. But it wasn't always easy. Throughout my career, my patients and I have always been looking for additional weight loss solutions. When the new weight loss injections came on the scene with the approval of Wegovy, which is semaglutide, in 2021, and Zepbound, or Tirzepatide, in 2023, I was so pleased that new solutions were available, especially since these medications are peptides that our own bodies produce naturally. I have prescribed natural hormones for years and already had experience using several peptides with good results, such as GHK-Q for skin health. Excited, but proceeding with caution. Despite my optimism, I knew it was important to evaluate the new weight loss injections carefully. My experience has taught me to proceed slowly and objectively when new wonder drugs hit the market. To illustrate this fact, let's look at some examples of FDA-approved and highly touted medications that were later found to be harmful. Drug studies are not always as well planned and objective as you would think, since they are conducted by the drug companies themselves. DS, which is a synthetic hormone given to many women and even put into hundreds of brands of prenatal vitamins, was found to cause cancers. Thalidomide, another drug given to pregnant women, was found to cause congenital abnormalities. Highly used menopause hormones such as Prempro were dethroned in 2002, after years of being the #1 blockbuster drug when a study revealed risks. The birth control pills were originally very high doses of synthetic hormones that were found to increase risks, so the doses were lowered. Fen-Phen, Meridia, and Belvic were weight loss drugs that were withdrawn from the market due to serious side effects. The list during my career also includes Vioxx and some vaccines being withdrawn from the market. Then we have drugs such as the opioids and amphetamines that have not been withdrawn, but were inappropriately promoted to the masses. All reasons to proceed with caution when considering the use of a new drug. Realize that drug marketing is a sales funnel. Indulge me as I get a bit long-winded and share with you some important lessons I've learned that have helped me when evaluating whether to personally use a new drug or prescribe a new drug for my patients. This information will help put drug marketing, which can be very powerful, especially with the help of social influencers, into perspective. Over the years, I've observed that the marketing of new drugs or treatments is very orchestrated and, honestly, oftentimes seems to follow a script. In the beginning, the benefits can seem too good to be true. I remember when cardiologists called for putting statin medications in our public water supply, since they have some anti-inflammatory benefits. Fast forward, and the data on their benefits is much more nuanced and has revealed their use should be limited to a much smaller population. I have also seen this with female hormone therapy. Estrogen and progesterone are very important and currently highly promoted, but they will not solve all your problems as is often touted. After convincing you a drug has fabulous benefits, the messaging switches to convincing you that you need the drug. It goes like this: your body is failing you, and this drug is your solution, with no mention of the multitude of lifestyle changes that might help. An example is when menopause hormones first became popular after a doctor wrote the Feminine Forever book. In that book, women were told the natural process of menopause was now deemed a disease that caused them to be a less than desirable, dried-up woman. No surprise that menopausal hormone therapy became a blockbuster drug after that. I love that in the modern world we have learned how to prolong health. But I hate that these messages are designed to convince you of your defective nature instead of empowering you. It is possible to be healthy without drugs. To the drug companies, honestly, the best drug is one you need forever. Marketing is often really geared to convince you that you will always need the drug. For example, you might hear the message that menopause is the rest of your life. So despite many health variables that may change over time, there's supposedly no need to reevaluate your use of the drug. You simply will need it for the rest of your life. Now that you are convinced you need a drug, of course, you can only get it from the company that developed or patented it. This almost always means, in the United States, that you are paying a high price. But no worries. They have a coupon that makes you go ahead and try that drug. Since everyone wants it, the drug can end up in short supply, and this exclusivity only makes you want it more. Again, no worries. They have a solution to help more and more people get on the drug. Compounding pharmacies are allowed to produce their drug during a shortage, which is kind of funny since typically drug companies try to convince you compounding pharmacies are not safe. Side note, I have used compounding pharmacies for years and consider ones with a long and safe track record to be very valuable. Sometimes you need to individualize a patient's prescription so that it is safer for them. For example, in 1993, when only non-bioidentical hormones were available for women from drug companies, I helped them obtain bioidentical hormones from a trusted compounding pharmacy. Compounders can provide a drug without ingredients such as dyes and fillers that patients want to avoid. Sometimes medications are cheaper through a compounding pharmacy, and sometimes, such as during shortages, they can help manufacture a needed drug. It's good to know, compounding pharmacies use active pharmaceutical-grade ingredients sourced from FDA-registered facilities, and compounding pharmacies are regulated by their state with FDA oversight. 503B compounders exist to mass-produce medications in short supply, while 503A compounders do individual prescriptions. So, now that the drug has become a blockbuster and, so many people are dependent on it, the coupons just run out. It's once again only available from the drug manufacturer that holds the patent. And those compounding pharmacies, well, they're now kind of vilified. This can unfortunately make drugs that were once accessible just not accessible anymore for some people. It's really unfortunate and honestly pretty unfair. Finally, as the patent on the drug is about to expire, which you'd think would finally help bring the cost down, a new way to deliver the drug, maybe a patch or an extended version, or even a new indication for that drug is found. This results in a new version of the drug that keeps the patent going. Usually, along the way, you'll see even more versions of the initial drug that are supposed to be even better, so that highly lucrative drug pipeline just keeps on rolling. Eventually, that too-good-to-be-true drug, well, it loses its shine. The high cost, the side effects, and even some newly discovered harms really start to diminish its appeal. Unfortunately, in all my years in medicine, I have to say, the perfect drug just hasn't been found. In my experience, despite all the hype when a new drug comes out, some version of this story almost always unfolds, and yeah, it pretty much always takes away from that initial excitement. So, health yourself action here. It's really important to be cautious and, be objective when a new drug is marketed. For example, Eli Lilly, the company that makes Tirzepatide, was actually fined billions in the past for deceptive marketing of an antipsychotic drug. Now, moving on to some of my thoughts about the pros and cons of weight loss injections. And just to be clear, I am not giving medical advice or making medical decisions for you. That should definitely be done with your provider. I'm also not providing an exhaustive review of these medications, their indications for use, or their dosages. Again, that's something to discuss with your provider. In this newsletter, I just want to highlight some information that, honestly, oftentimes isn't discussed. This information may help you make a more informed decision if you are using or considering these medications. Since an in-depth discussion of exactly how these medications work and the benefits and risks of these injections isn't really practical in this newsletter, I'll refer you to this article on Semaglutide and this article on Tirzepatide for more in-depth information. Right now, the majority of the research has been on GLP-1 drugs, which have actually been in use in different medications since 2005. A GLP-1 is in both of the new weight loss injections, but the concentration is much lower in Tirzepatide, since it also contains an additional peptide called GIP. Does the use of weight loss injections align with your personal health philosophy? For example, if you prefer to avoid medications and really strive to do things naturally, you might want to avoid these medications, or maybe wait until you've tried lifestyle changes first, or at least wait until they have been studied a bit longer. My own health philosophy is to always work hard on improving my lifestyle before even considering any medication. Don't let hype and marketing derail your core beliefs. Medications are not always the best option. Cost. Drug treatment should be evaluated on an individual basis. Don't let drug marketing override your unique situation and needs. All drugs have financial costs, health benefits, and health risks. Carefully evaluate all of these factors with a provider if you are considering them. Cost is a very big issue when considering these injections, since the drug companies classify them as lifetime medications, and the data gathered since they were introduced shows very few people successfully transition off of them without regaining the weight. The appetite suppression and metabolic benefits of these medications really diminish when you stop them. Since many people use these medications but do not qualify for insurance reimbursement, it's important to consider cost, since over time these costs can be very significant. Currently, both Eli Lilly, through a program called Lilly Direct, and Novo Nordisk, through a program called NovoCare, are offering a discounted, direct-to-consumer price for their weight loss injections. You can find information on their websites. Spoiler alert, it is still expensive. So, the price of these injections is usually cheaper from a compounding pharmacy, but honestly, it's kind of unclear if getting them from compounding pharmacies will continue to be an option. Right now, both of the name brand drugs are not in short supply, so the mass production 503B compounders really shouldn't be producing it. The drug companies would also prefer that it wasn't available from 503A compounders, which are the ones that serve individuals who need a unique prescription. However, some 503A compounders are continuing to provide these medications under the assumption that as long as they're not making an exact copy of the patented name brand drug, they're allowable. For example, they might offer a dosage that's not available from the drug companies, or they can add additional substances to these medications like vitamin B12, so the final product isn't an exact copy. But who knows how long this will last? The drug companies are currently suing online companies that have been selling compounded versions to the masses, such as Mochi Health. And in general, they're really trying to stop all compounding by suing some compounding pharmacies. Just as a side note, I've seen things like this play out before, since I've been prescribing compounded hormone therapy for years. Ever since compounding pharmacies started offering bioidentical hormones, the drug companies have been trying to outlaw it, but so far they've been unsuccessful. Also, a previous compounded weight loss drug I used for women, HCG, which actually had good success, was removed from being classified as a drug and put into a class called biologics. Compounders are only allowed to make drugs, not biologics, so that ended access to HCG from compounders. The price of these medications is even cheaper if you illegally, assuming you're not a researcher, order them from what's called the gray market. The gray market could be a legitimate drug manufacturer that makes the drug for research purposes in animals, and the drug comes labeled not for human consumption. The manufacturing process should be basically the same, depending on who you're dealing with, but it's definitely not as tightly regulated. I'd have concerns for things like, is it sterile, since these medications are injected into the body? Is it the proper dose, or does it contain contaminants? They could even be selling you no drug at all. It's really the Wild West. Certificates of analysis that may be provided from these sellers can also be fake. I don't advise this route at all. Please be picky about what you invite into your body. You know, just as a side note, I'm someone who has seen fraud, fakes, and honestly, some pretty poor quality in the supplement industry. Fakes on Amazon are, well, really rampant. I actually go out of my way to visit supplement manufacturers myself, just to make sure they're following the best manufacturing standards, and I really do my research before I use any supplement company. I'm also super careful to avoid exposing supplements to high temperatures during storage or transport, like, being shipped on a boat all the way from China. To avoid this, I order my supplements directly from the warehouse of a US manufacturer. And hey, if you want to read an article I wrote that covers supplement quality, you can read it here. So let's talk about the benefits. If your goal is to lose weight, these medications will absolutely help you do that. They're almost equivalent to bariatric surgery, which historically has been the best method for losing weight. But obviously, these injections are much less invasive. Basically, these injections give you the gift of not needing sheer willpower to eat less, because they support metabolic control of blood sugar, slow down the GI tract, and affect the satiety centers in the brain that reduce appetite. When you're on these medications, you simply won't think about food as much. And when you use this gift wisely to break any addictions to unhealthy eating habits and combine them with exercise, they can be a real win-win. Weight loss injections have also been found to improve cardiovascular health and blood sugar control, which is super important for long-term health. And, additional research is showing benefits in multiple organs, like the kidneys, brain, and joints, because these injections have anti-inflammatory effects. So let's look at the big picture here. In my career, I've worked exclusively with women, and I know just how important weight is to most of us, both mentally and physically. Honestly, it's kind of like how Viagra is so important to men. Now, all medications do come with their risks, and, as individuals, we all have different levels of risk tolerance. It's really important to know the risks of any medication. So I'll refer you to the articles I mentioned earlier that cover these medications in depth, including the risks. I trust women to decide what's best for them once they've had a chance to weigh the risks and benefits. I also want to point out a few things that, in my opinion, can reduce risk. For example, you can often reduce side effects like nausea and cut down on risks like muscle and bone loss, pancreatitis, and even gastric paralysis by using the lowest dosage that's effective, which is often much lower than what the drug companies recommend. With a lower dose, the weight loss happens more slowly, which actually helps preserve muscle mass, especially if you're exercising. Resistance training is really a must when you're on these medications. Hair loss, which is super common with rapid weight loss, is also less likely to happen. Plus, the weight loss injections can stay effective longer, since drug resistance is reduced when you stick with lower doses. Finally, to help reduce risks, patients should really be screened appropriately before starting these injections, instead of just answering a few quick online questions. The risks are higher for certain individuals, like someone with a history of thyroid cancer or prior pancreatitis. I also want to mention some other things that I think could potentially affect the safety of these weight loss injections. Since semaglutide and tirzepatide are modeled after peptides that your own body produces, I'm hopeful that their long-term risk profile will be reasonable. But the drug companies did change the chemical structure of these peptides so they'd last longer in the body and not require frequent injections. And these drugs are actually many, many times stronger than the peptides your own body makes. Large doses were needed to get the results they were after. All of this I keep in the back of my mind since, in my decades of working with hormones, I have learned bioidentical hormones, those exact copies of what the body would make, tend to be superior. And I have learned that large doses can be problematic since they upset normal hormone balance by causing hormone resistance. For example, we all know elevated levels of insulin can cause insulin resistance. Finally, I do want to point out these drugs do have a black box warning due to increased medullary thyroid cancers in rodents. I am also concerned about the new data revealing their effects on the eyes, including blindness. So, carefully consider the risks before starting any medication. Health yourself. Do your research. Know the pros and cons of these medications. Going slow and low can reduce risks and side effects. Last words of advice. You may need supplements when on weight loss injections. When dieting, especially on these medications, it can be difficult to obtain all the nutrients your body needs. That's one reason women experience hair loss. Most women need at least a multivitamin to avoid deficiencies. I like a multivitamin from Wholescripts, called Xemogen's Active Nutrients. You can log into your account or create an account to get it. Since you don't want to lose too much muscle, it's important to obtain adequate protein. Since bulky protein is often not palatable to women on these medications, you may need to supplement with a protein shake. I like, from Wholescripts, Orgain Organic Protein Powder. Muscle loss can be very significant on these medications if you are not careful. Muscle is your metabolic currency, so to maintain weight loss, you do not want to lose it. As I have said, resistance exercise is a must on these medications to help retain muscle mass. This is especially important as we age, since it can be extremely hard to rebuild muscle. If you are not able to exercise due to physical limitations or just want to be proactive, I recommend that you supplement from Wholescripts with Xemogen's HMB Pro, which has studies showing it helps maintain muscle even when inactive. Finally, if you are transitioning off these medications or just want to blunt your appetite, consider a supplement that can elevate your own body's production of GLP-1. Many supplements are now touting that they can do this, but the supplement I have seen with the best data is Calicurb. You can read about it at Calicurb. Dr. Brenda Smith. Dr. Brenda Smith newsletter provides general health information for educational purposes only. The information in this newsletter is not to be used as a substitute for medical advice, cannot diagnose or treat any health condition, and does not substitute for care from your own in-person physician. Any questions regarding your own health should be addressed to your own primary care physician or other healthcare provider.